Hi, I'm John Dawson with Dawson Builders. Today we're going to talk about sump pumps. Interesting thing about sump pumps is they sit dormant all winter long, and usually failure happens with sump pumps because they sat dormant. So it's good to test them early in the spring to make sure they're working. Here's a standard sump pump setup. You have check valves on the top, and what check valves do is they keep the water on this side of the pipe. Once the pump pumps it up, it stops it from going back down into the pit. So you have one for the regular pump and then one for your backup. This is your backup down here. We're not going to talk about backups today. We'll do that in a separate video. You have two cords coming into your outlet. One is for the motor and one is for the backup. This one here is for the motor. So we're going to test whether the motor's working or not. And the only way you can do that is by touching the float inside the pit. So here's the pit, and most pits have a cover on them, and they come off in all different ways. And this particular one just has a slit on it. You can just bend the cover around the pipes, and then it'll just come off like that. Now down in the pit, what you have here are two pumps. This one is the backup pump that's set down here a little bit deeper than the other one, but the float for the backup one is higher than the float for the regular pump. And this is the regular pump right here, and this black thing right here is the float. Now the floats can be different. They could be in a housing like this, or they could be floating separately. All you have to do is lift it up and make sure that the motor goes on, and then just release it. And if that happens, you know your pump's working fine. Now that we know the pump's working, how long will it work for? Pumps are interesting. They can work for 1 year, they can work for 10 years. They're motors. They just will burn out faster and sometimes last longer. That's why it's important to have a backup system. So now you know how this sump pump works and how this float works, but there's two other types of floats. One float is connected to the outlet, and we'll show you that in a separate video if you have that type. And another float is a pressure switch. Now the pressure switches are quite difficult to get to because you got to reach way down in the pump, in the pit, get underneath the pump, and click the switch. Kind of challenging to do. So one of the things you can do to get your float working is you can run water into your pit. Usually your pit is right next to your hot water heater. So right down here, there's a spigot on your hot water heater. So if you brought your garden hose down, you can attach your garden hose to the bottom of your hot water heater, and you can drain it into your pit, and your pit will run. It's actually a pretty good thing to do too, because you're supposed to drain your hot water heater once a year or every other year, because sediment builds up on the bottom, and by draining it helps with the life of the water heater. So there's 3 different types of pumps to be concerned about. See our other videos.